So welcome to everyone. We are going to start with this important event, very actual, as it concerns the last flow of people from Myanmar to Thailand, mainly, but not only because of the mandatory conscription, but we know also there is conflict and war on the border. So today, this is the first of a series of two, actually. The next one will be on the 30th of April, but this one will focus in particularly on the issue of young people fleeing the country and what universities can do about this. So SEA Junction is one of the partners together with the Institute for Population and Social Research and the Institute of Human Rights of Mahidol University, as well as with the Migrant Working Group that were represented here also as speaker. The moderator for today is going to be Mike Ayers from the Mahidol University Institute of Human Rights and Peace Study. I don't think he needs much introduction, but eventually he can do himself. So please, Mike, and I forgot to say I am Leah Shortino, and I am the director of SEA Junction, the venue that, as you know, you are here, a public venue focusing on Southeast Asia, and I am also related with IPSR, Institute for Population and Social Research at Mahidol University.
Thanks, Rosalia, for the introduction. I'm going to keep this rather brief because we have maybe a little bit too complex panel that we've planned today involving people in the room and online. And we have a great selection of panelists to kind of give an overview of this situation. I mean, what motivates this is the main question about, well, what could or should we be doing in Thailand about the impact of conscription? Now, this is a very specific issue. Of course, a much broader issue of migration and forced migration is an important one. But for us at universities, it is kind of like a critical question because many students here, and we may be looking at, say, tens of thousands and thousands of students potentially face conscription. And this is going to put, give questions to universities about their obligations in terms of protection, also with businesses and workers and so on. And so we're looking broadly at this topic around migration and conscription. Now, firstly, I'm just going to check I've done everything I should do. Yep. Now, what we're going to do first is want to just hear a couple of very brief statements or brief discussions from students themselves. Now, these are online. We're not going to identify them. They preferred not to be identified, but some are maybe in Myanmar, some may be here. But at like a personal and community level, they are facing these issues about what's happening with conscription because it's coming into effect like these very weeks. So hopefully what we've got, Yongchi, can we now switch to these student statements? Are they there? And after that, we'll have just a couple of brief statements and then I'll introduce the next speaker. There we go. Okay, so I'll pass it over to the students. Let's see how this works.
Hello. So I saw student 234, so that would be me, I guess.
Yep.
And just briefly, the conscription law that I've seen the impacts on the youth here in Myanmar is two things. It's in the rural areas, in the urban areas. In the urban areas like in Yangon, basically people left jobs in restaurants and other service sectors have very, very few people working now. That will impact on the economy in the long run. So it's quite empty with it here in the urban settings. In the rural areas, the impacts of the conscription law on youth is not only on their personal securities, but also on the extortion of money from parents that is rampant. The extortions of money is rampant at the moment. And yeah, basically young people who already left or are planning to leave are just in a panic mode at the moment. So that will be my short statement. Thank you.
Great, and I think we'll now go to the second student. We've just got one more student, and then we'll hear from Zaw Latt. Okay. Student 2, if you could unmute and give a brief. Yeah.
Okay. So I will a bit talk about what it's going on inside. So of course, this conscription law is kind of the previous law for the people of Myanmar, particularly like for the young people of Myanmar. It's threat the life of young people as well. So we are currently witnessing and hearing and experiencing a mass movement in Myanmar as people like struggle to survive and escape from the SAC fuel policy. If they cannot flee right now, they might be forced to sacrifice their life for nothing there. Therefore, like, as long as they can, they're trying to flee from Myanmar. So particularly in Thailand, as Ajahn also mentioned before. So, but it's not an easy destination to reach here. When they reach here, so they came here with the tourist visa, and then they have to stay apartment, but like it's just quite not easy for them. The parent, they cannot support for a long time as well. Of course, like for those who privileged background may find it easier because money can do some, very easy way, like just giving money, like for visa, passport, they can do it. But for those people who cannot, that is the most difficult situation right now. Some family face it like economic insecure currently because like they have to sell their property, borrow money to send their loved one to abroad to study here, to release, to escape from this cure policy. In certain case, like this person are breadwinner, so their family income is instability. So for those who are unable to leave the country, they have no option. They have to join one of the ethnic armed group. For example, my niece recently, she was under the list of the SAC in second batch. So my sister told me, so we should send her to one of the EAO area. So it's a very sad news. And also those people who cannot have access and they don't know how to flee and they don't know how to join the EAO, they just have to been through this kind of conscripted, like for example, one young man from Kerdmongkol region recently suicide himself, and then this kind of problem is ongoing right now. And then another significant impact is like social injustice and disruption is ongoing. Like SAC recruitment team is now, they have fully authority to implement this project since it's become de jure. Like this is also the meat of second batch recruitment process. So even they are sending with the paper, this is the list that you have to join, but like so many young people, they're trying to flee and they're trying to hide somewhere. So instead of them, their wife or their family member, like parents, are being arrested and take away, like adopted. So this kind of situation is ongoing right now in Myanmar. So that's why people who trying to flee to abroad, so they also something is ongoing where they are flying right now. I hope so. This is that information that I gathering. Thank you very much.
Great, and thanks for giving us this view from students' view or the youth view from inside. Now, at this point, we'll now turn it over to Zaw Latt, who's a journalist with Mizzima News, which is one of the main free presses in Myanmar. So over to you. If you could, and Zaw Latt is just going to give a brief overview of what's been happening in terms of big issues in Myanmar and also conscription. Over to you.
Thanks, Mike. I completely agree with the student 1 and 2. What's happened, the consequences of the conscription law is, of course, first thing is many young people leaving. That is also really, that is a fact. Because of the law, who are going to impact, it is like 40 million young people aged between 18 to 35. For women, aged between 18 to 27. So woman population, 7.7 million, and then man population, 6.3 million. So the impacted people aged between 18 to 35, my estimation, at least 10%, 1.4 million are going to leave, either legally or illegally. If you look at last 2 months, because it started initiated in February 10, there is a illegal entry, mainly young people into Thailand, very obvious, of course, Singapore, Malaysia, India, even China, go further, Qatar, many different places. And also long queue, you're seeing that even the Thai embassy has to limit only 700 visa application a day, started from 400, then they increase. So these are the really what happened. And then also I completely agree, those young people first is living abroad any way they can. I just came back from Messau yesterday, I just went to see a few safe houses. There is a few safe houses for the young people who are impacted of this conscription law, newly arranged, new category. Previously, it was for refugees or CDM soldier or other form of, people fleeing. But now there is some preparation for the conscription law. And the second student said there is so far as a journalist 6 suicide cases that we recorded, and also 20 ward of village local officer. This conscription is going through the local administrator and resign. So these are the currently, living abroad any way possible is one of the categories. Joining PDF, and recently PDF Yangon, PDF other, they're saying that they will accept. And also there is a lot of youth movement and saying no. Actually, this is very, very unlawful. In terms of legal, there is no bylaw. And also this was by Tanchue era and in 2010, 14 years ago, but never activate. In terms of legal, it's nowhere near legal time, because our current SEC has no parliament, no authority, they are the emergency government, there is no way. And also there is no bylaw. Because of lack of clarity, there is a huge corruption. So if you got arrested and sent to one of the training centers, there are 15 training centers so far across mainly in Yangon, Mandalay, and they got a military training, high school and military training, many different names. If you got arrested, but you can pay money. So the current price is 30 lakh, which is the 3 million jet, to 80 lakh, depending on where you got arrested. So huge corruption, bribe, the kind of, it is a modern form of slavery that basically forcing these, and young people. So this is, and also the first student said, at the moment, there is a socio-economic impact of lack of young people in workforce. Because, the pattern of migration change from the low-scale labor to very high competent young working force with the skills, knowledge, education, living. And if you look at property market, Myanmar, it's a third. Most condo buying in Thailand. I'm very surprised next to Russia and China. And so there is, some middle class affordable, those who can afford, also live in country where they are assessed. So I think, also I don't think this will significantly increase military capability if they recruit. Even, now if you look at those surrender or arrest or kill. They are 4-year trained defense service academies guys. So these conscription students only 3 months, very short time. In Rohingya, in Rakhine, they forcibly put Rohingya and, around 100 Rohingya K. They were only got 2 weeks training. So basically, they like to use these young people rather than professional soldier or army capability. They were used as a human shields. So these are the real fact. I mean, I don't see any near enhancing of military capability or capacity with these newly recruit young people. And also, even, very prestigious DSA, Defense Service Academy, their capacity intake is 480. The last batch was only 78. So the army, it is a sign of army desperation. They are desperate about this, human resources, losing all the benefit and many different area and morally low, and they haven't recruitment crisis. Before they enforce this law, if you can recruit one soldier, that is a 70 lakh, say it's a 1.7 million jets. So these are all dire consequences. So I think, in my assessment, and there is a huge corruption going, and also, about the living legally or illegally, because of this desperation, and it's impact on corruption. If you want to make passport now very difficult, you have to pay bribe. Again, another 30 lakh, 3 million jet to 50 million jet to obtain even the QR code number and passport process, and also army trying to block every way that possible about this brain drain and young people leaving. So the current, as a journalist, I will start with the current issue. This is a second batch recruitment is going on. And also recent amnesty. There is a young people also 3,000 amnesty. They are listed to serve in the conscription law. So I think, I don't think it is, although a lot of sad story, I will tell you one real story. One of my friend journalists, her niece was arrested and taken to the military training. So her mother ended in the hospital, heart attack, spending another, 50 lakh. And then they have to bring her niece or her grandson back, that another 30 lakh in Rangoon. Now they are finding a place to hide him because the second wave for recruitment is in Yangon, actively going door to door and taking the list. So I think this is what is happening on the ground. So for the Thailand, what you can do, of course, consider legally or illegally those who are leaving country, how can you facilitate or assist them anyway possible, for the temporary shelter or temporary chance. And I'm not talking about not low-level labor. They are competent, they have skill, they are educated, but it is unavoidable that they are going to come to Thailand anyway, because it is very close. So out of these, 40 million impacted people, as my estimation, 1.4 million, I don't know so far within 2 months, 3 months, how many already flee. There will be more fleeing, my estimation is right, 1.4 million will leave. Please do what we can, help any way that we can assist. I don't think that will last very long. It is only temporary assistance that they may require, and also integrate them into the workforce or into the studies or into the, something that they can continue their survival. So this is my overview of what is going on the ground. Thanks, Mike.
Great. Thanks for that. That was a good discussion of some of the main issues. It seems like corruption, and particularly how that affects the marginalized and the poor, is a very important context of that. Okay, so now we'll go to our next speaker, Ajahn Sriprapha Petcharamesree. She's based at the Faculty of Law, Chulalongkorn University, though we have worked together for 20 years before that at the Institute for Human Rights and Peace Studies. And she's going to talk a bit about some of the legal context and the right context in terms of Thailand, and also the role of the university. Over to you, Ajahn.
Thank you very much, Mike. As you heard from Ajahn Mike, that I was assigned to actually to cover many things. I will be trying to finish, if I can, within 10 minutes that I was given. I just want to start by saying that mandatory conscription is not new in South Asia. In Thailand, for example, the Military Act was actually enacted 70 years ago, so in 1954. This year is actually 70th anniversary of that Military Act. So actually what is happening in Myanmar is quite new. As our colleague just mentioned, the law was there in 2010, but then just announced a few months ago. So it's new for Myanmar, but it's not new for Thailand, and it's not new for South Asian countries. I think what is different between Thai Military Act and the mandatory conscription law of Myanmar is that in Thailand, only male are obliged to go for military selection. In the case of Myanmar, they also include both male and female. And the age is different because in Myanmar, it started 18. In Thailand, when you are reaching your 21 years old. The second thing that I just like to mention is that international human rights law does not actually prohibit mandatory conscription. It's considered as a sovereign right of the state to actually to come up with this kind of law. But of course, there are some particular exceptions which could be considered as human rights violations, and this is according to OSCHR. For example, in the following situation, mandatory conscription may be considered as human rights violations. For example, pick up arbitrarily without any conscription notice or order. So that's one of the reasons why the Myanmar military authority came up with law, because when it's legalized at the national level, it's not considered as arbitrary. The second one, when you send someone to fight without any opportunity to appeal the conscription order, so there's no, without any due process, that is considered as human rights violation. Or given an extreme ultimatum, either fight for the state or die or torture, then definitely this is human rights violation. Or recruited as a child. So, Myanmar was actually known, and is still known as for using not only child labor, but also child soldiers. So this is nothing new. Whether or not the right to object, objection, how we call it, the objector of conscience, right? Whether or not we have right to object the mandatory conscription was not made clear in international human rights law. I think Tom and Ruth will be in much better position to talk about this than me. But as I said, it's not clearly, the right to object is not clearly protected in international human rights law. When it's come to what Thailand can do, in the situation that we heard from our colleague and we heard from the two students earlier, there are quite a number of things, and I could pick it up on some particular examples. But don't forget that, first of all, Thailand is not party to 1951 Refugee Convention. And although the term refugee is not recognized by the Thai authorities, is not recognized officially at least. And although we have the national screening mechanism, the term refugee was not included there. In the same time, it's about, screening whether or not the person is in need of international protection. But it's completely different from refugee status determination. So I just want to mention this as a first point. What I would like to mention about what Thailand can do in order to, support refugees, especially those who are currently students. But don't forget that in Thailand, it's not only students who come to Thailand. There are many other, Burmese coming to Thailand, fleeing persecution, fleeing other, economic or social situation, as we can see already. What I think what Thailand can do and doing currently, first of all, Thailand seems to be willing, according to their foreign policy, of course, to be willing to take a leading role in engaging with the military junta to tackle the escalating conflict. Well, that's what, of course, we see. The second one, actually, Thailand now step up, and we hear these more or less every day now. International and multilateral efforts aim at peace in the country by seeking to work with ASEAN and other external partners in advancing humanitarian assistance. And I think this is what we have been hearing during the past maybe about a month or so. And Thailand is now taking the greater role, which was not the case before, in spearheading, as I said, humanitarian efforts and engagement with, and they said not only military junta, but also different ethnic groups, which is a good thing. But it's not enough, because I feel that Thailand could do more. First of all, definitely, Thailand has committed to principle of non-refoulement. So the government has to ensure that they fully fulfill their commitments by not pushing back people fleeing either from fighting or from mandatory conscription from Myanmar. Secondly, the Thai government, and this is in history, used to set up the holding center in the western part of Thailand to host students fleeing from persecution after 1988 student uprising. The center had been a resettlement course for more than 2,000 Burmese student refugees, most of whom actually have resettled to United States, in European countries, and Australia, New Zealand, for example. There might be about 100 of them, left in Thailand and later return to Myanmar. This may not be a good option, but can be considered. The third one, and here come to the university, since I think I was expected to talk about the roles of universities. I think Thai universities should revisit their strict regulations in admitting students who are under difficult circumstances, like the Burmese students are currently facing. The way they had done in the past, with the Thai authorities using or applying the policy of turning blind eye. That was the case before. When I recall, when I was still at Mahidol University, when we first opened the human rights program, actually half of students, the first batch, were Burmese students in exile. And most of them, or many of them, didn't have any proper documents. Still, the university was actually open enough to allow them to register without demanding so many documents. So university by then were more lenient with requirements of legal papers, including certificates. As I said, as many of them did not carry with them any educational document or lost them during their hiding, because many of them hide for years. Fourth, I think Thailand has to uphold their education for all policy. Education for all was actually intended to open the doors to Thai educational institutions for all children, and not only children, regardless of their legal status or lack of documentation. So we realize, however, that turning policy into practice has proved to be quite challenging. And the reality is that not many children and students, can attend the Thai school or Thai universities. So the Thai government allow, for example, migrant learning centers a degree of freedom, and Addison would be talking about that later, I guess. But to operate, but little access to formal accreditation process. And so there is a real need to provide children with accredited education, including transcripts that are transferable to other education systems and authorities, and that provide avenues for higher education as well. I just want to emphasize here, it is also important for the Thai authority to actually grant official school status from migrant learning centers. And currently, teachers who are teaching at the migrant learning center, they do not have legal right to teach. So I'm now calling here, I'm calling that Ministry of Education provides migrant teachers with identification card, which is, I think, the current status, but it's important for them to have a kind of license to teach, the proper license to teach, and not just a card. There are four other things that I would like to add, that students are also encouraged to enroll in a non-formal education program, which is called Kosono, a 3-year catch-up program that was originally created for the Thai students who had missed out on education, but which is now open to migrant students to introduce them gradually to the Thai language and curriculum. And of course, after they finish this so-called Kosono, they could also apply for university at the university level. But here, as I said, the Thai Ministry of Education can actually allow youth fleeing from Myanmar to sit for exam that is internationally recognized general education diploma. This is something that I think we can think about. This will potentially allow at least entry, into universities later. I would like to also touch upon ASEAN, because I feel that in ASEAN, migration and forced displacement have serious regional implications and consequences. So if ASEAN were to create ASEAN-wide education framework to support legal status, for example, from migrant learning centers, the transfer of academic records and certification of teachers' expertise or license that I mentioned earlier, this would serve the interests of those building, the regional economy, as well as those who are migrating or possibly displaced, which is the current situation. In this case, as educators like us, we could play a very critical role in developing the standard and mechanism for to achieving this goal. And finally, and critically, I feel that government must provide funding if policies such as education for all or cross-border initiatives are to be effectively implemented, to avoid vital functions remaining financially dependent, on international organizations, as we know that funding from international organizations is actually drying. Education for refugees and other migrants demand not only acknowledgement, but also investment. So I'm calling the Thai University to invest on education, not only for Thai students. Thank you.
Great, and thanks. That was a good 4 points. Okay, and now we'll go to Addison. You can come and sit here. It's going to be speaking in Thai with the translation, looking at some of the current Thai laws and Thai standards.
will be asynchronous interpretation.
ต้องขอโทษที่ใช้ภาษาไทยนะครับเพราะว่ามันมีเรื่องของตัวไอ้ข้อกฎหมายบางอย่างที่คิดว่าจะต้องอธิบายภาษาไทยมันจะชัดเจนกว่าพูดภาษาอังกฤษนะขอ
I apologize. I'm gonna be speaking Thai. It's easier because there's some details that it's easier for me to express in Thai.
เริ่มต้นจากการที่พูดถึงตัวสถานการณ์ของผลกระทบของตัวคนที่เป็นผู้หนีภัยจากพม่านะในช่วงหลังรัฐประหารรวมถึงเรื่องของช่วงที่มีการ
I'm going to talk about right after the coup, what the effects that have happened among the people who are the refugees.
เราแบ่งคร่าวๆเป็น4 กลุ่มกลุ่มแรกคือกลุ่มที่เป็นตัวผู้หนีภัยการสู้รบจากในพื้นที่ชายแดนนะครับจำนวนที่เราคาดการณ์น่าอยู่ที่ประมาณ 50,000 คนประมาณนั้นนะครับแต่ว่ามีลักษณะของการเข้าออกเรื่อยๆปัจจุบันก็จะมีจำนวนหนึ่งที่อยู่ตรงพื้นที่ชายแดนไทยพม่าอยู่จำนวนมาก
There are 4 groups. As you can see here, we think the estimate is around 50 to 70,000 along the border.
กลุ่มที่ 2จะเป็นกลุ่มผู้ลี้ภัยทางการเมืองที่ออกมาตั้งแต่หลังรัฐประหารพม่าใหม่ๆนะครับซึ่งจำนวนหนึ่งเนี่ยอยู่ในประเทศไทยเนี่ยนะที่เป็นนักศึกษาในมหาลัยหรือว่าเป็นนักศึกษาที่เรียนอยู่ในกลุ่มที่เรียนอยู่ในสถานศึกษาของไทยนะครับจำนวนที่เราประเมินคร่าวๆอยู่ที่ประมาณสัก2 ถึง 30,000 คนประมาณนั้นนะครับ
So the other thing is about this group around so there's about 20 to 30,000 that we estimate also are people who have left who are the activist students.
แล้วก็กลุ่มที่ 3เป็นกลุ่มที่มีความสัมพันธ์กับกลุ่มที่เป็นแรงงานข้ามชาติในประเทศไทยเนาะส่วนใหญ่ก็จะหนีเข้ามาในประเทศไทยแล้วก็อาจจะเข้าเป็นส่วนหนึ่งของแรงงานข้ามชาติในประเทศไทยไปแล้วนะครับ
So the third group are people who are migrant workers who have come as well and also fleeing.
กลุ่มสุดท้ายคือกลุ่มที่เป็นคนที่หนีสถานการณ์การเกณฑ์ทหารจากพม่าเข้ามาในประเทศไทยนะซึ่งตัวเลขประมาณการที่เราประมาณร่วมกันระหว่างภาคประชาสังคมไทยกับภาคประชาสังคมพม่าเนี่ยเราคิดว่าน่าจะเป็น 10% ของคนที่รับผลกระทบจากการเกณฑ์ทหารทั้งหมดก็อยู่ที่ประมาณ1.4 ล้านกว่าคนนะที่จะเป็นคนที่จะตัดสินใจอพยพเดินทางเข้ามาในประเทศไทย
We think that the new migration, the 4th group of conscriptions, people who are leaving, is about 1.4 million.
สิ่งหนึ่งที่มันเกิดขึ้นคือผลกระทบที่เกิดขึ้นแน่นอนอันแรกก็คือเรื่องของการตัดสินใจเดินทางเข้ามาในประเทศไทยเนี่ยด้วยข้อจำกัดและด้วยระยะเวลาที่มันค่อนข้างจะบีบรัดนะฮะทำให้มันมีคนเข้ามาในประเทศไทยใน2 ลักษณะทั้งคือกลุ่มหนึ่งก็คือลักลอบเข้ามาโดยไม่มีเอกสารเดินทางก็คือเดินทางข้ามมาเลยก็อีกกลุ่มหนึ่งก็คือพอมีเวลาเตรียมตัวก็คือสามารถจะไปดำเนินการเดินทางเข้าเมืองอย่างถูกกฎหมายฉะนั้นเราจะเห็นภาพของคนพม่าคนหนุ่มสาวพม่าจำนวนมากนะที่ไปนั่งรอขอวีซ่าที่สถานทูตไทยที่ยังกุ้งนะฮะนั่นก็เป็นอีกประเด็น
So to summarize, there's really 2 main ways and 2 impetus for people who are just fleeing without any documentation, and the second group are people who are going to the Yangon embassy, going to the Thai embassy and trying to enter using documentation.
อันนี้พอเข้ามา2 ลักษณะแบบนี้เนี่ยสิ่งที่ขาดไปในการดำเนินการของรัฐบาลไทยก็คือมันไม่มีกลไกในการคัดกรองว่าใครคือคนที่เข้ามาในลักษณะของการเดินทางปกติใครคือคนผู้หนีภัยนะผู้ลี้ภัยการบังคับเกณฑ์ทหารเข้ามานั้นทำให้รัฐบาลไทยเนี่ยจะปฏิบัติกับคนทั้ง2 กลุ่มเนี่ยในลักษณะที่ไม่ได้ต่างกันก็คือท้ายที่สุดคนที่เข้ามาถูกกฎหมายนะครับแล้วก็ระยะเวลาที่ต้องอยู่นานเข้าไปปุ๊บเนี่ยจะทำให้ตัววีซ่าหมดอายุนะครับหรือว่าเขาไม่สามารถต่อวีซ่าได้หรือว่าตัวหนังสือเดินทางซึ่งตัวหนังสือเดินทางพม่าเนี่ยมีอายุไม่เกิน5 ปีนั้นพอครบ5 ปีปุ๊บเนี่ยตัว
So just to say that because Thailand lacks a mechanism of screening, the screening process, what is happening is a lot of people who are coming and trying to go through the process, even though they might come in with documentation, eventually their documentation expires.
ครับอายุพาสปอร์ตอยู่5 ปี
So passports have a 5-year duration, and a lot of them are facing expiration of
ดังนั้นเนี่ย
passports.
เราจะเริ่มเห็นคนนักศึกษาจำนวนหนึ่งเนี่ยที่อายุหนังสือเดินทางหมดแล้วไม่สามารถขอต่อประเทศไทยได้เพราะว่ากลุ่มนี้คือเข้ามาแต่หลังรัฐประหารใหม่ๆครับแล้วก็เจอกลุ่มนี้เพิ่มมากขึ้น
So this is a say, to say that we have been dealing with the situation for a while. This is expiration of passports of students who are here and here to stay.
ซึ่งปัจจัยพวกนี้มันทำให้เกิดความเสี่ยงในแง่ของการถูกจับในฐานะที่เป็นคนเข้าเมืองผิดกฎหมายมีเรื่องของการผลักดันส่งกลับแล้วก็รวมถึงเรื่องของการเข้าถึงบริการขั้นพื้นฐานทั่วไปเช่นการรักษาพยาบาลการเรียนและการทำงาน
So as you see here, the big problem is that they are being treated and treated as fugitives without support. So irregardless of what the situation is, because there is no screening process.
สิ่งที่สำคัญเลยก็คือรัฐบาลไทยไม่ได้มีนโยบายอะไรกับเรื่องนี้นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นการขาดนโยบายในการเงินเรื่องนี้เนี่ยทำให้ผลกระทบที่เกิดขึ้นในระยะต่อไปก็คือเราก็จะเผชิญกับคนที่มีฐานะเข้าเมืองผิดกฎหมายเพิ่มมากขึ้น
So this is a big crisis because Thailand doesn't have a clear policy about this. There will be an increase of undocumented persons because of this issue.
สำหรับกลุ่มที่เป็นผู้ลี้ภัยที่เป็นนักศึกษาในสถาบันการศึกษาของไทยนะครับเราพบว่ามันมีตัวข้อจำกัดแล้วก็เงื่อนไขที่ทำให้เกิดความเสี่ยงกับกลุ่มผู้ลี้ภัยเนี่ย3 เรื่องนะครับเรื่องแรกคือเรื่องของสิทธิในการอยู่อาศัยในประเทศไทยนะครับ
สิทธิในอะไรนะ
ในการอยู่อาศัยนะครับ
So we discovered there are 3 issues that we encounter in the challenge that the group of students who have come and are refugees. One is the right of residency.
คืออย่างนักศึกษาบางคนที่แม้สามารถจะขอเปลี่ยนวีซ่าจากวีซ่าท่องเที่ยวหรือวีซ่าที่ยกเว้นนะครับเข้ามาในประเทศไทยเนี่ยได้เป็นวีซ่านักศึกษาได้เนาะแต่ว่าตัวเงื่อนไขหรือว่าตัวระยะเวลาในการอยู่เนี่ยมันต้องจำกัดอย่างเช่นเขาจะเริ่มได้ก่อน90 วันหลังจากนั้นก็ขยายเป็น1 ปีนะครับพอ1 ปีปุ๊บมันก็หมดแล้วก็ต้องหาทาง
So there are various ways that they come in. They come in as a tourist visa. Sometimes they have to renew, every 90 days. And then, the limitations that are involved in, 1 year, after a year or so, they cannot do this anymore.
สิ่งที่น่าสนใจกว่าคือท้ายสุดพอได้วีซ่านักศึกษาเข้ามาเนี่ยรัฐบาลไทยก็จะมองว่าพวกกลุ่มนี้เป็นนักศึกษาไม่ได้มองในฐานะที่เป็นผู้ลี้ภัยที่มีความเสี่ยงในเรื่องของการเดินทางกลับหรือความเสี่ยงอื่นๆที่เกิดขึ้นนะครับ
The problem is when they enter as a student, they're not viewed as a refugee. They're viewed as a student. And without the risk, they don't consider the risk of them returning.
อันที่2ก็คือเรื่องของตัวผลกระทบในแง่การใช้ชีวิตเนื่องจากการย้ายถิ่นครั้งนี้มันเป็นการย้ายถิ่นที่ผมคิดโอกาสเตรียมตัวมันน้อยดังนั้นเนี่ยเขาต้องมาอยู่ประเทศไทยนานๆเนี่ยในการหาเลี้ยงชีพตัวเองในการทำงานเนี่ยมันเป็นเรื่องสำคัญนะครับล่าสุดที่เราเจอคือที่เชียงใหม่มีนักศึกษาจากพม่าจำนวนหนึ่งเนี่ยถูกจับในข้อหาทำงานโดยไม่มีใบอนุญาตทำงานเพราะว่าต้องไปทำงานหาเลี้ยงชีพตัวเองตำรวจก็จับในข้อหานี้ซึ่งปัจจุบันอยู่ระหว่างการขอในการเจรจาขอให้มีการเสียค่าปรับแล้วปล่อยตัวไปนะครับ
So the second issue is that they don't have a way to take care of themselves economically. They cannot work. Cases are happening a lot in Chiang Mai where, these persons, their students are working and they are detained on the charge of illegal working.
อีกประเด็นหนึ่งที่เราเจอก็คือประเทศไทยมีตัวกลไกการคัดกรองผู้ลี้ภัยนะจริงๆเขาใช้ว่าการคัดกรองคนที่ไม่สามารถเดินทางกับประเทศต้นทางได้เนาะแล้วก็รวมถึงมีกฎหมายที่พูดถึงเรื่องการห้ามการส่งกลับนะครับซึ่งเพิ่งประกาศไปประมาณสักปีกว่าๆที่ผ่านมานะครับแต่ว่าทั้ง
Last year there is a law in Thailand that it is framed in terms of those who are not able to return to their country, and this is for the past year or so.
แต่ว่าทั้งสองอันเนี่ยในแง่ของการบังคับใช้เนี่ยยังมีปัญหาค่อนข้างมากอย่างเช่นในกรณีของกลไกการคัดกรองผู้ลี้ภัยนะคือท้ายที่สุดเนี่ยกลไกมันออกแบบให้คนที่เป็นผู้ลี้ภัยเนี่ยต้องไปมอบตัวกับเจ้าหน้าที่คือต้องมีโดนลงโทษก่อนแล้วค่อยประกันตัวออกมาเข้าสู่ในระบบอย่างเงี้ย
So the second law is about the screening process, that we do have a process in place, but the problem is it requires people to submit and report themselves to the authorities.
ซึ่งตัวเลขล่าสุดที่มีการกำหนดสถานะแบบนี้ให้น่าจะยังไม่ถึง100 คนนะครับแล้วก็ไม่มีผู้ลี้ภัยจากพม่าในกระบวนการนี้เลยนะครับ
So far we have 100 of these cases and none of them are from Myanmar.
สองก็คือไอ้ตัวกลไกการเรื่องของการไม่ผลักดันส่งกลับเนี่ยแม้จะมีกฎหมายแต่ว่าปัญหาที่เราเจอก็คือว่าตัวเจ้าหน้าที่เนี่ยไม่ได้มีมาตรการหรือขั้นตอนในการดำเนินการคัดกรองว่าคนกลุ่มนี้ควรถูกส่งกลับหรือไม่นะทำให้มีความเสี่ยงที่เราเคยเจอหลายกรณีที่ถูกส่งกลับและมีอันตรายนะครับคือถูกจับหรือบางทีก็หายตัวไปเลยนะครับในแง่
So the other instance in which the process of not returning persons who may be at risk is that the state authorities themselves don't have a way to identify and process and procedures in place in order for them to know that someone who is sent back will be in harm or disappeared. And we've found certain cases that they were disappeared.
ดังนั้นถ้าดูอย่างเงี้ยข้อเสนอเบื้องต้นคร่าวๆที่เราไทยจะต้องทำก็คือมี2 เรื่องหลักๆนะครับแต่ว่าจะมีรายละเอียดของ2 เรื่องหลักๆอีกหนึ่งก็คือควรให้สิทธิในการอยู่อาศัยกับกลุ่มนักศึกษาไปก่อนนะครับอันที่2ก็คือว่าควรเปิดโอกาสให้เขาสามารถทำงานได้ในระหว่างเรียนอยู่ในประเทศไทยนะครับ
Other than doing the screening process and coming up with procedures, it's really to open a channel for people who are in country to work and take care of themselves.
ครับในเชิงรายละเอียดของในตัวข้อเสนอที่รัฐไทยควรทำจริงๆทำเป็นข้อเสนอคร่าวๆมาอย่างนี้นะครับเบื้องต้นคือมันคงตั้งต้นเรื่องด้วยการไม่ผลักดันส่งกลับคือรัฐไทยต้องยืนยันว่าการผลักดันส่งกลับเป็นความผิดตามกฎหมายนะครับซึ่งยืนยันอย่างนี้นะครับแล้วก็หลังจากนั้นเนี่ยนำไปสู่กระบวนการ
The first thing that is quite important is that Thailand must agree not to participate in any more illegal pushbacks and recognize that what that is a violation of international law.
อันที่2ก็คือควรจะมีกลไกในการคัดกรองคนที่เป็นผู้ลี้ภัยร่วมนะครับระหว่างกระทรวงมหาดไทยนะที่เป็นคนที่ดูไอ้ตัวเรื่องกฎหมายคนเข้าเมืองกับสถาบันการศึกษาเป็นมหาลัยหรือก็ตามแต่เนี่ยเพราะว่าจริงๆตัวมหาวิทยาลัยเองมีข้อมูลของผู้ลี้ภัยกลุ่มนี้อยู่แล้วในตัวนั้นก็คือควรมีกระบวนการในการคัดกรองร่วมกันแล้วหลังจากนั้นค่อยนำไปสู่การกำหนดสถานะกฎหมายนะครับ
So we also recommend a joint screening process between the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Education, which often already have the specifics of the student profiles.
คือโดยในข้อเสนอของเราก็คือว่าหลังจากที่ผ่านไอ้ตัวกระบวนการคัดกรองนะคงต้องมีการออกเอกสารอะไรบางอย่างให้ตัวนักศึกษาไว้แล้วก็ในการก็ข้อเสนอของเราคือให้ผ่อนผันให้อยู่ในประเทศไทยเป็นการชั่วคราวไป2 ปีก่อนหรือเป็นการ2 ปีที่สามารถขอต่อได้ถ้าเกิดว่าสถานการณ์ไม่ดีขึ้นนะครับแล้วก็อีกอันหนึ่งก็คือสามารถที่จะผ่อนผันให้อนุญาตให้ทำงานได้ซึ่งทั้งหมดเนี่ยมีกฎหมายไทยรองรับทั้ง2 ส่วนก็คือมีทั้งพรบคนเข้าเมืองแล้วก็พรบการจัดการการทำงานคนต่างด้าวที่อนุญาตให้สามารถทำได้ทั้งคู่นะครับ
To summarize, we recommend that there is a changing in these laws or immigration law for entry to allow for these individuals to stay at least 2 years or more until the conflict is resolved. And that additionally, there has to be reform with พรบไหนนะ
คนเข้าเมือง
อีกอันหนึ่ง
กับการทำงานคนต่างด้าว
and also for the management of foreign workers. There needs to be 2 legal reforms.
แล้วมีอีก2 อันที่คิดว่ารัฐบาลไทยควรพิจารณาอันแรกก็คือการจัดการกลุ่มนักศึกษาที่ยังมีฐานะถูกกฎหมายอยู่ นะครับก็คืออาจจะถือวีซ่านักศึกษาอยู่เนี่ยสิ่งหนึ่งที่ควรทำเลยก็คือผมคิดว่าควรจะปรับจากวีซ่านักศึกษาเป็นวีซ่าเพื่อมนุษยธรรมเนาะแล้วก็กำหนดระยะเวลาให้สามารถยื่นขอวีซ่าครั้งเดียวได้ตามระยะเวลาของหลักสูตรที่เรียนอาจจะเป็น4 ปีหรือเป็น3 ปีอะไรอย่างเงี้ยตามเงื่อนไขของหลักสูตรไปนะครับ
Another resolution is also to establish a humanitarian visa so that students who do come and are not yet completed their education, regardless of documentation, they can complete it based on this humanitarian-based visa.
อีกข้อสุดท้ายที่คิดว่ารัฐบาลไทยควรทำเลยก็คือจะเป็นข้อเสนอเดียวกับข้อเสนอจากศรีประภาคือว่าจริงๆประเทศไทยมีนโยบายเรื่องของการศึกษาทั่วหน้าเนาะสิ่งหนึ่งที่ตัวกระทรวงศึกษาต้องทำเลยก็คือต้องจะทำแนวปฏิบัติหรือว่าตัวหนังสือสั่งการเนี่ยไปที่สถาบันการศึกษาแล้วก็หน่วยงานที่เกี่ยวข้องในเรื่องนี้โดยเฉพาะยิ่งสถาบันศึกษาระดับอุดมศึกษาซึ่งเดิมเนี่ยไม่ได้อยู่ในการดูแลของกระทรวงศึกษาโดยตรงเนี่ยให้สามารถรับนักเรียนนักศึกษาที่ไม่มีเอกสารตามกฎหมายเข้าเรียนได้โดยจริงๆโดยกระทรวงศึกษาจะมีระบบในการเลขประจำตัว13 หลักให้แล้วก็ท้ายสุดจะมีกระบวนการพัฒนาสาธารณะให้กลายเป็นคนที่มีเลขประจำตัวในประเทศไทยตามกฎหมายตามกฎหมายของไทยได้นะครับ
I'm not sure if I can translate properly. Maybe a chance you can help. The thing is, there's a 13-digit that enables especially high school students to enable them to have some more education. And so he's proposing that the Ministry of Education work on multiple levels, right? Higher education to Udom Suksa, ไปถึงอุดมศึกษา so all the way down. So is that correct?
Propose the same thing because Ministry of Education has been practicing by giving the 13-digit no, not 13-digit, but the kind of code is called G code, which could be translated and transferred into a 13-digit, which is required for all people living in Thailand, and that could be applied at the university level as well.
คงประมาณนี้ครับพูดครับ
So for the last speaker, we have the Tom Andrews online, the Special Rapporteur for Myanmar. And we're hoping if he's there, he can give just a brief overview from the international level in terms of conscription and human rights.
Well, thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Am I coming through?
Yep, we can hear.
Okay, that's terrific. Well, thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum today. And I think the very thoughtful comments are very much worth not only consideration but discussion. But let me just say a few things about some of the fundamentals here of what's happening. First of all, we know that this conscription has been the result of the decline of the military junta and the decline of its forces. It has lost tens of thousands of troops since the coup, and it is clearly desperate and is seeking any and every way to bolster its ranks. It's now trying to recruit. The targeted number is about 5,000 per month. This, I don't think it's going out on a limb to say, to predict that this is not going to work, that this is further inflaming public opposition and hatred toward the junta by the people of Myanmar. And I think that it is weakening the junta even more. But it's noteworthy, as some of my fellow panelists have also referred to, that the junta has gone through the pretense of framing this conscription as legitimate by linking it to the 2010 military service law. And of course, that law authorized a government to establish a mandatory conscription process and program, which is legitimate and practiced by countries, various countries around the world. But the key here is that it needs to be a legitimate government that implements this law, and this military junta is not a legitimate government. But in reality, this pretense, trying to seek legitimacy, trying to frame this as a legitimate process, of course, is what we're seeing here is just really an extension of the illegal forced recruitment that the junta has been using, various practices that the junta has been using now for the past several years. I mean, we're talking about forcing and pressuring community leaders, village leaders, family members, local administrators to identify and force young people into a military service. And they're threatened in various ways, including the destruction of entire villages. There's also been, of course, the use of false advertisements, luring unsuspecting young people into to the military, threats by the military to be in prison, abductions of young people from the streets of Myanmar. So this is an ongoing pattern and process that has been being implemented by and engaged by the military junta for some time. It's just now it is going through this pretense of trying to legitimize itself by referring to this 2010 military service law. I just want to note, however, that what is particularly egregious and outrageous to me has been the forced recruitment of Rohingya young people. And of course, Rohingya young people are at a distinct disadvantage because they, unlike most, they don't have the capacity to escape, to run, to move, because there is a law strictly enforced in Rakhine State that prevents the movement of Rohingya. So here you have, now we're estimating over 1,000 Rohingya young people have been forcibly recruited into military service, largely to serve as human shields. And it is really very, very difficult for me to even imagine what it is, the experience of being forced, which of course the junta denies, by the way. They say we're only recruiting citizens. But it is incredible to me to imagine a young person whose community has been devastated by genocidal attacks to be forced to serve in the very military that committed these genocidal attacks that drove that killed untold numbers of people, that drove hundreds and hundreds of thousands over the border into Bangladesh, where nearly 1 million people now live under very, very harsh conditions in these refugee camps in Bangladesh. So it's just, I think, particularly egregious what is happening to the Rohingya community. Of course, young people have been on the front lines of the movement to oppose the junta, to save Myanmar from this horror that has been inflicted upon them by the military. So they are particular targets because of their effectiveness in organizing, mobilizing, and sustaining opposition, widespread opposition to the junta throughout the country. So they're particularly dangerous for the junta, which is another reason why I think young people here are being targeted, and I deeply, deeply admire those young people who have been on the front lines of this movement. And of course, young people are avoiding this this idea of being forced into the military in any and every way possible, as my fellow panelists have described. You know, the question of what Thailand can do, what the international community can do, my fellow panelists have been very clear and very specific about things that the steps that Thailand can take with respect to these young people who have literally running for their lives, and as so many others from Myanmar running for their lives from this horror inside of the country. But it's also been suggested that Thailand can address some of the root causes of all of this and work toward addressing why and how this is all happening. And of course, it's all happening because of the military junta, the illegal military junta, and the suggestion that that Thailand participate in multilateral efforts, I think, is an important one, and one that that should be examined. And I think the fundamental consideration is what works and what doesn't. What multilateral efforts can actually produce some results, and what efforts have proven that they cannot. ASEAN, of course, just a few months after the coup in April of 2021, brought leaders of all ASEAN leaders together in Indonesia to discuss what ASEAN as a whole can do. They established, with the participation of Min Aung Hlaing, the senior general from Myanmar, in a 5-point consensus, the first point of which was to halt the violence, and the violence occurring in Myanmar. Min Aung Hlaing, the ink on that agreement was barely dry when Min Aung Hlaing returned to Myanmar and dismissed the 5-point consensus as mere suggestions that he will consider after he's put down the opposition. So this is what we're dealing with here, and this is who we're dealing with here. An engagement with such an individual and an entity has proven to be, well, not successful. And so I think what's important is that the international community consider and engage in ways, in measures that can have some impact. And the three things that the junta needs to sustain itself are money, weapons, and legitimacy. And I think that there are ways that ASEAN countries, ASEAN as a whole, and the international community can and have been taking steps to address these three ingredients to the sustainability of the junta, and address them and take away those very means by which the junta can sustain itself. Last year, I produced a paper, and in fact, I'm in the process right now of finalizing an additional follow-on paper on the sources of weapons for the junta and the sources of money for the junta. How is the junta able to get the weapons that it needs, even though the UN General Assembly called upon member states very early on in this crisis to work to stop the flow of weapons going into Myanmar? And what we found is that, I'll give you an example. Singapore, for example, we found that Singapore was the third largest source of weapons flowing into the junta last year. $254 million worth of weapons materials that were then being used to manufacture weapons inside of Myanmar, sent into Myanmar by Singapore-based entities. Well, in the year that has passed since that report, the percentage of imports of these materials going into Myanmar has dropped by 83%. As a matter of fact, some of the more recent information I've been receiving and reviewing shows that number has dropped even more. So what we're finding, we also have found that countries like the United States, UK, the European Union, and others have been taking measures to stop the flow of money. The United States last year establishing sanctions on the Myanmar Foreign Trade Bank, for example, and Australia just a few months ago following suit. What is important that with respect to these international efforts is that more countries become involved in these efforts, including Thailand. Singapore, I think, is a really great example of what can be done when a government takes it seriously. As a matter of fact, when I produced this report and then discussed it with the Human Rights Council in Geneva last year, Singapore was very quick to stand and say, we are launching an investigation of this report and its findings. They asked me to come and help them with this investigation. I traveled to Singapore and was very happy to do so. And we see the results that are very encouraging as other diplomatic efforts also kicked in to involve themselves and engage in this process of taking away from the junta what it needs to sustain these attacks on the people of Myanmar. So I think these are important steps forward, but the problem is that there's not enough that's happening with respect to these efforts, and they're not coordinated and they're not strategic. So we need to have those countries in ASEAN who are willing to take measures like Singapore has, as well as countries around the world, Australia, the United States, the European Union, and others, to focus on what it is that clearly the junta needs, that we as an international community can address and stop them from obtaining, to eliminate the threat that they pose for not only Myanmar but for the region and for the world, and to stop the attacks that are underway against the people of Myanmar. So I think in terms of what we can do, the key here is addressing the source of the problem while we work, as my fellow panelists have very clearly outlined, steps and measures that we can take to protect those and stand with those who are suffering inside of Myanmar, as well as those who have run for their lives and escaped over the border into Thailand and other areas. So these are all things that I think that we can do and should do, and I very much appreciate the fact that this forum is happening, and very happy to participate in it. So thank you.
Great, thanks for that. Now, at this point, we're running over time, so I think we'll now turn to questions. If anyone has any questions from the audience, or if you are thinking about, when you want some time to think about your questions, we do have a couple more students here who may want to give a quick statement. Maybe student 3, just a reminder that we're not identifying any students or where they're at, but if student 3, if you want to give a quick, here we go.
Thank you so much, Professor Mike. For about the conscription law, I was really upset when I heard about the enforcement of the military service law in Myanmar. This is the life-threatening event for Myanmar youths, who are the most precious persons and future leaders of the country. Now, the military junta don't have much left regarding human resources, right? So to fight for them, I think they are applying the law as their last weapon to support their attempted coup. I'm afraid they will use the youths who are enrolled under the law as human shields, or to explore the mines in the battles with PDFs or ethnic groups. This can also be very difficult for PDF and EAO sites to combat against those youths who were citizens before. Another thing is, although the law said the duration of the military service is 2 years, they can extend the period up to 5 years in the emergency case, according to the law. And even the period can be unlimited within their military power, like the current military coup period and unlimited extension. So once the youth enter in their cave, it will be very difficult to escape. And currently, the conscription law is very shocking for the Myanmar youths, and it is a huge and strong strike to the people in Myanmar, especially the youth. Although I am now in another country studying peacefully, I always feel sad and distressed to hear about the travel of my sister, relatives, close friends, colleagues, and other youth. The young people in Myanmar now living in fear of the time they will be listed in the military service. So some youths want to the neighboring countries legally or illegally to escape from the military service law. However, they are facing difficulties in those countries regarding visas, finance, employment, and security. In some townships in Myanmar, as the youths who are enlisted in the military service evaded to another places, so the police and military personnel raided the homes to capture other youths who are not still enlisted in the military service. So every person in Myanmar are not safe to stay at home and even to go out right now, whether they are enlisted or not. And I also heard about this corruption around the conscription to give money if you want to be free from the military service. And the last thing I heard is that the close people to the military are not enlisted or left from enrolling the military service. So it's not fair for everyone. So what I want to support on behalf of the youths in Myanmar is that the neighboring country, I want to propose the neighboring country and international community to stop the military hunters' actions and to support Myanmar youths as much as possible. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Any questions to the panelists? Yeah.
Hello, great talk. Thank you, everybody. I'd just like to ask, and I'm not trying to be like very incriminating at all, but I'm kind of putting forth this question about whether the Thai government is benefiting from a politically unstable Myanmar. I say this because of two things, because Thailand's labor pool is shrinking and the Thai economy relies a lot on the labor from Myanmar. And the other point being, and this is a very specific example, is that PTT, the main oil conglomerate in Thailand, has taken over the oil fields in Myanmar because Total Energies has left Myanmar because of human rights abuses, obviously. And examples like that make me think that maybe Thailand is standing to gain from a politically unstable Myanmar. So I'd like to have your opinions on that. And I also have another question. Sorry, okay.
Very provocative question. I think actually Thailand can be considered as both gain and loss, in my opinion. Because whatever happened in neighboring countries, they are losing at least. The first one is credibility, because Thailand have not done as much as they could have done. This is the first thing. The second thing, you might notice that because of the fighting currently, ongoing currently, actually, import and export, especially export from Thailand via Myanmar is almost stopped. So as I said, it's gain and loss, gain but not very legitimate gain, because whatever happened, with, for example, PTT, as I said, it's not legitimate in the eyes of many.
Do we have an online panelist who wants to give a response? No, if not, any other questions before we go to your second one? We can't spoil you. Yeah. 2 questions. Any other questions from the floor? No? Okay, we'll take your second question.
Thank you. So my second question is, how exactly can Thailand help Myanmar achieve peace? Because I'm thinking, like, even if Thailand could help, I don't think the peace would be really sustainable, because the root cause would be still there. Aung San Suu Kyi is still jailed, and the National League for Democracy is still dissolved. And even if they try to hold an election, and nobody would ever vote for the junta again. So I'm wondering how Thailand could help, and what are the channels for achieving sustainable peace.
Yeah. I'll just check if any of the online Zaw Latt or Tom Andrews, if you want to comment on that first, and if not, Zaw Latt, do you want to answer that? Yep.
Actually, Tom already mentioned about specific Singaporean and example. I think that especially ASEAN, Thailand is the most relevant one, sharing border with 240 kilometers and, peace and stabilities. Thailand can do a lot more than what they are doing right now. But the only thing is they have to change their approach from the military as their only institution, the military approach to many other newly emerged stakeholder, like in Myanmar, who is controlling. There is another, not only army or other, PGF are controlling. There is many other along the Thailand border. There is an IEC in Karenni. They declare their own independent state. So they need to engage them, as a legitimate other entity. Then, that would be, that can bring more peace and stability along the border, as well as, recognizing another emerging, territorial control, legitimate authorities, not only a New Zealand, other, there is another, a lot of ethnic groups now claiming for their legitimacy, then they are state within states authorities. Then that can change a lot too. So this is my quick response.
In my opinion, I don't think Thailand could be a proper peace broker. Well, we heard the Minister of Foreign Affairs said this last night that Thailand would be ready to be peace broker. But as I said, I don't think Thailand would be a good peace broker for a few reasons. First of all, you can see that in the case of Southern Thailand, we need actually someone else to broker, even among the groups in the Southern Thailand itself. Secondly, Thailand, especially the Thai government, has so much stake in Myanmar. And they are not really talking about addressing the root causes until now, only humanitarian assistance. The third point that I just like to mention here is that, being peace broker, you need quite many important qualifications. When I look at the qualifications of Thailand and the Thai government, I don't see that they are qualified to be peace broker.
Now, do we have some questions in the chat? Yep.
Yes, we have. There's a question from Sabe Kai asking about, I am aware that this panel is about the youth, but may I humbly add my question here? Whether educator or teacher who has no legal status can apply for any identification to stay in Thailand? If yes, how can they apply? Teacher and educator.
Addison and I, we consult with each other, and I think we agree that actually there is no specific procedure for teachers or professors. All foreigners will have to go through the same process. If you ask Jan Mike what kind of process we had gone through, then it's exactly the same. Am I correct, Rosalia?
And there's the second question. The second question is that as many refugees are trying to apply for work permit and pink card as a worker, but the problem is that the national identification of some of them have problem due to being CDM student or CDM civil servants. For those people, the Myanmar authority won't issue certification of identification. So should the Thai government linear its rule for that purpose?
Okay, but I think this is an implication that CDMers aren't getting the same access to the cards, which I'm not quite sure is the case. But do you want to answer that?
I have not heard about, because this is about applying non-discrimination principle, right? Whether or not you are CDM or non-CDM, I don't think there is any particular treatment, or different treatment between CDM and non-CDM, because in fact, the Thai government doesn't have, as we said earlier, refugee status determination of law. It's only national screening mechanism, which, as Addison had mentioned earlier, that until now, I think they have done about 79, screening persons, and none of them was actually Burmese. So CDM or non-CDM is actually treated in the same way, that CDM or non-CDM could be detained, arrested and detained. So no difference in my opinion.
I mean, what the distinction should be is that CDMers should be protected from being forced back under the non-refoulement, because possibly if they have blacklisted or if they may face persecution because of their CDM status. But that's refugee status as opposed to their access to Thai identification and the rights to be in Thailand. Okay, a couple more questions. Yeah.
Okay, another question is that since the junta make us civilians and the international community species, is there any way or actions we the international communities can make them busy, such as making the junta accountable for their war crimes and crimes against humanity? Yeah,
I think that's a question for Tom, and I think the UN has probably thrown every mechanism ever invented at Myanmar, with maybe I won't give the level of a success, but maybe Tom, you can address that in terms of what's been. This will probably take hours, but if you can do it in a minute about what mechanisms are in process.
Well, 1 minute, and can you hear me? I was having trouble unmuting myself, which someone considered to be a distinct advantage for all of you. But can you hear me now? Am I coming through? Okay. There are various mechanisms. Of course, the Security Council is the most important one, and of course, there's been no progress with respect to action by the Security Council. There are other measures that are available, but I think within the UN. But I think the key here is coordinated action outside of the formal mechanisms of the United Nations, and that countries who believe that more can and should be done to support the people of Myanmar need to be more effective in that coordination. What I think is really important in terms of any efforts to engage is the recognition of the failure of engagement to this point, and the necessity for the junta to understand that the jig is up, that this is just not sustainable, that it has no support inside of the country nor outside of the country. So it just cannot continue to its murderous ways because it's just simply not sustainable. Now, I mentioned, and by the way, if you look at the United Nations Human Rights Council website under special procedures and click onto me and my section, you'll see a series of papers that I have written and comments that I've made about specific options for the United Nations and what it can do and should be doing that it's not doing. But I think that there are new options under the International Criminal Court that could be considered and exercised. Specifically, the NUG declared a few years ago that Myanmar should be and would be under the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. But in order for that to happen, there needs to be member states come forward, or that is members of the court, the signatories of the Rome Statute, to come forward with a complaint and a request for the prosecutor to initiate an investigation of violations of international law. That has not happened yet. And so one of the options for member states to consider is to file a complaint to notify the prosecutor that they would like to see an investigation to occur. The prosecutor can make a determination if, in fact, a investigation should and will proceed. If not, he has to identify why, and then an appeal can be made with the court itself as to that option. So that is one of the options that has not been, I think, fully vetted and considered by members of the court, member states, participants of the court, of the International Criminal Court, that I think should be considered. But in the meantime, I think coordinated action outside of UN mechanisms is sorely needed.
So we've just got like 1 or 2 minutes, but maybe we should have the last question from in the room if there are any questions here. Okay, we'll take both questions at once, yeah? This is the last opportunity.
Well, my question is like more of a thought. I was just thinking like, how is the state of South-South cooperation? Because I think like maybe the Thailand-Myanmar case could learn a little bit, for example, from the Colombian and Venezuelan crisis, especially not because the context is very different, but I think the amount of migration of migrants that enter Colombia in the Venezuelan crisis were like a lot. So maybe there is a political framework or a legal framework that you can start to analyze from the Colombian authorities to apply it to Thailand. And just that, like, how is the cooperation South-South right now, this term?
A somewhat related question. So about 10 years ago, I interned with UNHCR here. I did research about 5 years ago about refugees in Thailand as well. And a lot of the suggestions being sort of put forward just make me think that, well, if the 51 Refugee Convention and 67 Protocol were implemented, it would be essentially the same thing, which, you know, I know it's a strategy to sort of avoid necessarily pushing the Thai government, signing something they're not comfortable with. But this question of political will always seems to be a little bit lacking in Thailand. Is there anything in particular about this crisis that suggests that there's more political will or a different kind of political will in place that we might actually see some sustainable change? Maybe not necessarily only for this crisis that's happening in Myanmar, but maybe other crises that might happen in the future.
I think we see two different things. The first one is Thailand seems to be having a strong political view to address what it's called humanitarian, matter by initiating humanitarian assistance, of course, under the auspice of ASEAN. I think that is quite clear. But then when it comes to dealing with refugees as refugees, this is much more difficult because, as I mentioned earlier, that even the term refugee is not actually recognized by the Thai authorities. You don't find this vocabulary in the Thai official document. And secondly, if you review, for example, recommendations of the Thailand's UPR, you got many recommendations for Thailand to ratify 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol. And actually, the Thai government has hardly accepted that kind of recommendation. So I think there's no such political view for Thailand to actually recognize refugees as refugees. Even during the Indochina time, those Indochinese, those refugees from Indochina, they were not called refugees by the Thai authorities. They were called displaced persons.
So I'll just finally put it to Tom or To. Do you any final comments from those questions on South-South cooperation or Thai initiatives? No, okay, that's fine. So great, we can finish it there because I think we're spot on time. And so thanks everyone for attending this, and a special thanks to our panelists. Tom, it must be very early in the morning for you, and To Zaw Latt and Addison. So thank everyone, and I'm going to pass it over to Rosalia to close.
Yes, thank you to the interpreter. Please, you can show your face here. She has been translating from English to Thai for people on Zoom. So thank you very much. And thank you, of course, to Ajahn Musika Wong for translating here for our guest speaker. And thank you for all the speaker and the moderator for this very interesting. Unfortunately, it's more on the problem than the solution, but the solution are not easy to find these days for the entire world, I am afraid. We are going to do a follow-up event on a related issue, more generally about the issue, indeed, whether Thailand can become a safe home or not for refugees, and that will be in Thai on the 30th of April. And there will be someone, I suppose, Musika Wong will be translating on Zoom, so we can still listen to what the Thai speaker have to say. I also want to announce the update, what's happening in Myanmar is going to be the 40 updates. We have done this since the very beginning of the coup, and it is really a recording of a sad story. Again, the speaker is going to be Zaw Latt, who you have listened today. So please switch in. That is online on the 26th at 4 o'clock. And then an exhibition next month will be very interesting. It's about migrant story with photo taken by themselves. So it's more than just work, more than just labor is the title of the exhibition, and it's going to be composed of photo stories of migrants in the fishing industry, but also some of them are very recent migrants following the coup in Myanmar. So there is a link, and unfortunately, many of the restrictive regulation apply to them too. So please continue to follow SEA Junction, continue to support our work. On your way out, you can give a donation as usual, and you can have coffee and tea here on the side to continue the discussion. I thank you, IPSR and the Institute for Human Rights and Peace of Mahidol University for collaborating with us on this and the next episode. Thank you very much.